Let's do it. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and get started with our February joint public hearing. Thank you to all of our LURB members as well for joining us. We are going to start our evening with the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda, questions, comments, or a motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Majority approves. Motion carries. We will move forward with the agenda as is. Our joint public hearing item this evening is ZMA-1-25, Phase and Reserve. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Day. Good evening, Council. Good evening, LURB. Thank you for joining us. So to jump right into it, the joint public hearing for tonight, like Mayor Day said, was ZMA 1-25, which is zoning map amendment for a mixed-use development entitled Phase and Reserve. Throughout this presentation, I'll get you familiar with where the project is proposed. We'll go over the steps that the applicant has taken to get to this point. We'll go over some specific details about the master plan and some specific flexibility that's being requested, and then we'll close out the night talking about the comprehensive plan and alignment with the town's goal for growth. So without further ado, the subject property is made up of two parcels that are about 58 acres in size. Subject properties are located on the north side of Old Faison Road, about midway between I-540 to the west and Bethlehem Road to the east. Currently, the property is vacant and undeveloped, and what is being proposed is a rezoning from the Rural Transition Zoning District to the UR12 Plan Unit Development. Looking at the zoning of the surrounding area, in general, the land uses are residential in nature with a variety of different densities depending on which direction you go. But there are existing neighborhoods and planned neighborhoods all within this vicinity. So as a reminder, the proposed zoning district is Urban Residential Plan Unit Development, or UR12 Plan Unit Development, name of project's Phase and Reserve. The applicant is David Gorman with Walk 7 Development. His team is here present tonight. We'll address the board when the time comes. But again, the total property size is about 58 acres, and the specific land use being proposed is a total of 184 residential units, broken down by 106 single-family units, detached, and then 78 townhomes. Those will be attached for a proposed density a little over 3 units an acre. So, like always, here's a quick look at the proposed master plan, just to give you a mental image as we're going through this presentation here. We will get into more detail, so it won't be the last time you see it. But to talk about the timeline and what staff has been working with the developer on. So it's been about a year or so now, maybe a little bit longer, that we've been in communication with the developer, working through our typical process from the pre-application meeting all the way to a neighborhood meeting, to development review committee review, and then tonight is town council and LURB's joint public hearing. So we're here tonight to hear from everyone, including the public, to gather feedback on this proposal, to see if there's any improvements that can be made to better align it with the town's goals. Just to take note, all public advertisements have been, requirements have been met to hold this joint public hearing. So jumping back to about a year ago, we held a pre-application meeting with the developer to discuss the proposed project and just generally set expectations and deliver information related to Unified Development Ordinance, our development regulation consistency, comprehensive plan consistency, comprehensive transportation plan consistency, roadway alignment, other goals and other adopted plans that we typically review whenever new development comes in. Following month, the applicant submitted a formal sketch plan that's showing a variety of housing types, different lot sizes. As you can see on the screen, you have the townhomes and then some of the single-family detached products, kind of in distinct pods there. So as we were working with the developer, we were talking about other ways to intermingle housing types across the neighborhood. So they submitted another sketch plan in August of 2025. You can start to see that the housing types start to front the future Wide Waters Parkway extension through the center of the site. Start to develop better definition of open spaces towards the center of the site. And then also they added in a commercial out parcel to better align it with the mixed-use neighborhood future place type. After that, the applicant held a neighborhood meeting, which is a requirement before master plans are submitted. They actually held two different virtual meetings, consecutive Mondays. There was a good turnout of neighbors, about 33 people in that October 20th meeting. We had good conversations about just the existing vegetation and buffering that could be expected as this development if this development moves forward. There's discussions about ways to limit clearing and be cognizant of environmental impacts as a result of development. We also had discussions about the roadway improvements internal to the site and external, in general, site access, connectivity to the two adjacent neighborhoods. So to the west, there's the Churchill neighborhood, and then to the east is the Woodfield neighborhood. We had good turnout from the Woodfield Lane residents, so we did have discussions about interconnectivity and the town's expectations and requirements for connecting new neighborhoods with old neighborhoods. Then we continue that conversation talking about different impacts that could be anticipated from this development, the routing for construction traffic, possible noise and view shed impacts, and then construction timeline as a whole, and then public utilities and what that means to the area. The next month, the applicant submitted a formal master plan. So we scheduled it for review with the Development Review Committee to look at all the technical contents of the plan to ensure consistency. So what you have seen on the screen is what was proposed right after the neighborhood meeting. You'll see more definition of the central open spaces, some example imagery of the quality of these open spaces that could be expected out here. But really you start to see increased connectivity, internal and external, and a better mixture of housing types throughout. So that brings us to some of the technical comments that we discussed with Development Review Committee at the December 11th, 2025 meeting. Since this is a rezoning, no action was taken by the Development Review Committee. However, there were conversations at that meeting about lot width and adding a variety of lot widths and housing types. Again, talking about general roadway design, alleys, making sure alleys were connected and weren't resulting in dead ends. We talked about different traffic calming measures, specifically in between the two adjacent neighborhoods, Churchill and Woodfield. Trying to explore different methods that may calm traffic as traffic flows between the neighborhoods. Again, talked about general roadway improvements, the expectations for the infrastructure that would come along with a development of this nature. Talked about the phasing plan, and then in the environmental vein, talked about stormwater conveyance and design. So after that, they resubmitted last month to get on this agenda. Now what we see here is the proposed master plan that is being considered tonight by Town Council and LURB. Overall, it's 58 acres in size, 184 units split between single-family detached product and attached townhomes. Similar to most of our planned unit developments, there are requested site development allowances that would be necessary if this plan were to be approved as drawn today. We will get into that. But along the process, we talked about environmental features and what the existing conditions of the site look like. They had a wetland sketch map done to show, where the existing ponds are on the property, where existing streams are. This helps identify, potential environmental impacts and the need for other environmental reviews and things of that nature. And then, as the applicant started to develop this master plan, we identified that there would be, Neuse River buffers around those streams, which limit, the construction in those areas. So, in green on the screen, you'll see most of the areas that will be the trees, existing tree canopy will be preserved. That's largely made up of the 30-foot wide buffer that's around the entire perimeter of the site. Also these in areas on either side of the regulated streams, and then just some other common areas there. Overall, there's about 10 acres of preserved tree canopy anticipated with this, which would be about 18% of the site. So to get into the specifics with the lot breakdown, as proposed, there's 53 front-loaded units. These would be single-family homes with 60-foot wide minimum lot widths. What's shown on the master plan are a range of wider lots between 60 and 75 feet or so. The products are currently proposed as two-story products, but the applicant's requesting allowance up to 3-story maximum. So these front-loaded townhomes will make up about 29% of the development. Then there's also a single-family row home, which is a rear-loaded home. It's a narrower lot with a proposed minimum of 32 foot. The applicant has provided lot fits for a 32-foot and a 40-foot wide lot, showing that the homes that they anticipate building could fit within those parameters. Again, they're proposed as 2-story, but could go up to 3. And then these rear-loaded single-family detached would make up about 28% of the development. And then there are 78 rear-loaded townhomes. These are our attached units, up to 6 units in a run. The lot sizes would range between 20 to 24 feet. Again, these would be primarily proposed as 2-story units. However, they are requesting approval up to 4 stories for these townhomes, and these townhomes would make up about 42% of the site. I mentioned previously this is a mixed-use neighborhood. The applicant did propose a non-residential or a commercial outparcel by the site access and Old Faison Road. The intent here is to provide a variety of neighborhood-scale services for the new neighbors of this proposed development, as well as any existing neighbor in the vicinity. These things would be anything from professional office, medical office, daycares, recreational facilities, small restaurants. Really just something to give the people in the vicinity another option for goods and services. On the bottom of the screen is just a conceptual rendering of what this 7,500 square foot commercial structure may look like at the entrance of the neighborhood. Moving on to the phasing plan, it's anticipated to be built out in 8 to 10 phases, depending on how you look at it. With as shown on the phasing plan, the residential portion would be constructed earlier on in the development, and they would work through there, and then the phasing plan shows the commercial out parcel being developed as the last phase. This is something that I discussed with the applicant to see if maybe there's a way to bring the commercial portion online sooner, to start providing those goods and services earlier on to the neighbors and folks in the vicinity. There's also just some overall fine tuning of this phasing plan so we can all understand how Wide Waters Parkway will be constructed, how the site will be accessed, earlier on in the development, looking for ways to limit impacts to those existing neighbors, the neighborhoods on either side. Moving into open spaces, the applicant has demonstrated that they're able to meet the recreational open space requirements. Almost 7 acres is required. They're proposing almost 10 acres to be split among active open space and passive open space. So when we say active open space, we're talking about the soccer fields, playgrounds, bocce ball courts, public greenway trails, things of that nature, a clubhouse, swimming pool. So all of those elements are shown here on the master plan here. And here are some example imagery that the applicant provided as part of their application. And then on to the passive elements, they are providing an excess of passive recreational opportunities through trails around stormwater facilities with a fountain, a community garden, a berry patch. There's a couple native tree groves that are being proposed. So this central area is really kind of intermingling your active and passive recreational spaces to provide those opportunities to neighbors. And here are a couple example images of what could be expected in those passive open spaces. So moving on to architectural standards, the applicant has submitted a list of architectural standards that they're willing to commit to. They've proposed a zoning condition that would commit them to the concepts and the language that's outlined in the PUD document. So here are examples of product that could be expected if this development were to be approved. These would be your front-loaded 60-foot lots with garages facing forward. And then the written language that dictates these architectural standards are pretty similar to what we typically see for planned unit developments, talking about different product types, widths, parking, garages, different architectural elements. There's some language in there about outdoor living spaces, minimum sizes there, some language about what the garage doors look like. So they've outlined quite a bit that's generally consistent with what we see for a neighborhood of this scale. With their smaller product, here are those narrower lots that would be rear loaded, accessed by an alley with parking in the rear or on street. Again, these are very in line with what we typically see. Again, they've highlighted some outdoor usable space, some other ways to make sure that there's articulation and things on all sides of the home. And then here's some townhomes, again, attached in runs of no more than 6, 2 stories, what's being proposed. But again, like the single family, they're very, the language aligns with what we typically see here. So as always, we will continue conversations with the developer, and see where we land. But in general, like I've said, these are aligning with what we typically see. And then there's that rendering again of the commercial out parcel building that could be seen out there if this is approved. So moving on to pedestrian connectivity, it's an important aspect here in the town of Knightdale. Throughout the development, all roads will be public. There are some private alleys, but all the public roads will have either 5 or 6 foot wide sidewalks on them. And then the main collector road through the property, which is Wide Waters Parkway, would be constructed to the Main Street cross-section, which is a 70-foot wide road with bike facilities, sidewalks on either side. There's also a requirement that Widewater Parkway includes a multi-use trail on one side, so the applicant has modified the cross-section in certain situations. So I don't know if you can see this laser on the screen here, but Widewaters, they'll have a multi-use path along the roadway here. It'll peel off through the open spaces that kind of come through the central open space and then tie back in with Widewaters Parkway to come back to to meet up with Old Faison Road there. So overall, pedestrian facilities are being proposed. Roadway connectivity, you have it from Old Faison Road to the north, where there's a future railroad bridge, a rail crossing. The applicant's also proposing connections to both neighborhoods on either side. And with that, they are proposing some traffic calming measures at that connection point as a way to slow motorists down as if they do enter and leave those areas. And here's just a blow up of that specific. So what has been discussed up until this point is what's called a choker, and essentially it reduces the width of the lane by placing some curbs to reduce the width and cause the motorists to slow down as they are either entering or leaving whichever neighborhood they may be going to or leaving from. This is one of the approved traffic calming devices that we have in our policy, and it's something that we asked the applicant to explore in an effort to make sure that when trips do go on those roads, at least they're being aware that it's a neighborhood and not necessarily speeding through. Mentioned that there is a need for a railroad crossing. This was identified in the town's comprehensive transportation plan. You have a concept drawing at the top of the screen just that generally shows the parameters of this. So we've been working with the developer quite a bit on this. This connection's very important to the town to make a connection from Knightdale Boulevard all the way down to Bethlehem Road. I'll show you a graphic of what that looks like. But I will say that the applicant has been engaging with engineers and design professionals on what a bridge would look like and how they need to design their site to ensure that this bridge that goes over the railroad is actually a viable option. We are still working through the fine details of that. You can imagine that the construction of a bridge over a railroad, isn't the smallest feat. So, we've been working with our transportation partners, we've been working with the applicant, and really kind of pulling all our resources together to figure out how the town and the applicant, could partner together to make this crossing a reality. Hope to learn more about what that totally looks like and what the town can do to help ensure that this vision is achieved, and we'll provide updates and we can answer questions about what we know at this point. But here's a graphic that shows, so at the top you have Widewaters Parkway that is existing nearby the Mingo Creek Park that would connect. So you have that red line that shows from the top of the screen all the way down to Bethlehem Road. Creekview Crossings, that approved neighborhood at the top of the screen, they would be constructing their portion of Widewaters through their development. And then in the middle is the proposed Faison Reserve, showing that corridor in red still. And then at the bottom is the Linden Oaks development that was approved in 2024. They're moving close to construction, getting out there. So this graphic just shows that whenever this corridor is completed, it will create a significant corridor that can get folks from Knightdale Boulevard all the way down pretty much to I-87. As with most residential developments of this scale, a transportation impact analysis was required. It tripped the 150 peak hour trip threshold to require this. So the applicant engaged a traffic engineer to study the subject property, the proposed land uses, examine the immediate vicinity, look at the different intersections in the area that are expected to be impacted based on travel patterns as a result of this development. It also considered several of approved projects in the vicinity and outlined, those other developments' commitments that would ideally help alleviate, traffic concerns in the area. So through the analysis, they studied what the project, the trips that the project would generate, and my understanding is that the study also considered this if the bridge were operational. So it considered additional traffic actually being able to come down from Knightdale Boulevard rather than just studying traffic as an isolated segment of road. Through that analysis, they also looked at the impacts to Woodfield Lane in the adjacent neighborhood to see if cross connectivity would negatively impact the level of service that the neighbors on Woodfield Lane currently experience. The study found that really the anticipated number of trips to Woodfield Lane are negligible, just because with the construction of Widewaters Parkway, it would be anticipated that the neighbors of the new development would use Widewaters to get to either Old Faison Road or go up whenever the railroad crossing is constructed. They'd be able to use that roadway rather than going through Woodfield Lane or going through Churchill. I can't guarantee that motorists won't travel on those public roads. However, based on the study and the analysis, it's not anticipated that a significant number of trips will actually go onto Woodfield Lane or into Churchill. So the study recommended that the developer make roadway improvements at their site access on Old Faison Road by constructing a variety of turn lanes. The entrance at the neighborhood, if you were leaving the neighborhood to get onto Old Faison Road, you would have a stop sign coming out, and then you would be able to take your right or left movements. So that was the first alternative that was recommended by the study. Then we asked them to also study what a roundabout looks like in that location at the site access and Old Faison Road. There would be two collector roads that are meeting, and our regulations would require a roundabout at that location. Old Faison Road is a DOT road, so we would, need to continue working with them to make sure that, the roundabout would meet all of their requirements. But what the study, the transportation impact analysis found was that if a roundabout were to be constructed, it would operate at an acceptable level of service, through construction and beyond. This roundabout was even identified as a hotspot by the town council in years past. It's a priority of town councils for a roundabout. So, I've had conversations with the applicant trying to see if they can do a little bit further analysis to see if one of our roundabouts would fit in at that location, in an effort to provide some traffic calming and just an alternative design to your typical traffic light. So we will, have ongoing conversations about that. The applicant has identified some right-of-way constraints with the roundabout, but I anticipate further conversations with them to see if a roundabout would be a viable option. So that puts us to the requested instances of site development allowances. The majority of these are your typical, your setbacks, your lot width reductions, your driveway lengths, kind of your typical site development allowances that we've been seeing plan unit developments employ for the past couple years. So overall, they're requesting reduced lot widths for the rear loaded product. For the townhome, it'd be a minimum of 20-foot. Regulations require a minimum of 30. This is consistent with the townhomes we've been seeing, 20, 22, 24-foot wide lots and units there. We see a lot of times a request for reduced driveway lengths. Their 35-foot driveways are required for all the units. A little typo up there. What's being requested is a 25-foot driveway length for the front-loaded single-family, and then a 20-foot driveway minimum for the rear-loaded. So townhomes have 20-foot long driveways, and then all the other units would have 25. There's a request for setback relaxation for the townhomes. Townhomes have a 10-foot side setback. They're requesting a 3-foot side setback, and then for the clubhouse amenity, be classified as a commercial building type, which has a maximum setback of 30. They're requesting relief from that to not have a maximum setback, so they can push the amenity site off of the road and try to create some buffer between that. Another site development allowance that we've been hearing a lot lately is the request for mass grading, so residential clearing and grading. The UDO does not allow grading for lots greater than 60 feet until a building permit is issued. The applicant is requesting that they're allowed to mass grade the residential lots and the areas within the infrastructure, so roadways and everything, asking to be able to mass grade in one single phase and take care of, approach the development of the property that way. We've talked with the applicant, let them know that, generally mass grading is not what, the town would necessarily like to see all the time. We would like to see some selective clearing or some finer looking at the lots to see if there's any, good healthy trees that could be preserved and kind of incorporated into the design. I believe the applicant is prepared to kind of speak to this, this specific site development allowance, maybe highlight some of, their seen benefits for this type of approach. Another typical site development allowance is from our distribution of uses. Since it's a planned unit development, there is just a slight variety and breakdown of different housing types throughout. But based on the proposal, it seems to have a good, an adequate distribution between your detached single family and your townhomes, and then that neighborhood servant commercial up front. We were talking about the roundabout right there at the site access with Wide Waters Parkway. Again, the roundabout would be the town's preference because this is an NCDOT road. NCDOT was part of the transportation impact analysis review, and it's my understanding that they didn't necessarily flag any concerns with the roundabout being constructed here, with traffic flow and everything. So again, staff is recommending a little bit closer look at if this roundabout could be feasible here. So we'll continue those conversations and provide an update. Then for water allocation policy, the applicant has demonstrated compliance by proposing several of these recreational open space elements and other features of the development that would comply with the water allocation policy, through the implementation of affordable Knightdale, including some alternative stormwater designs, some public art, some wayfinding signage to direct traffic to important places throughout town, clubhouse, and a playground equipment. So they are meeting the the intent of the policy, so we will continue working with them to ensure that this policy is upheld. All right, so we're wrapping up here. So just as a reminder, the proposal for phase and reserve has a base zoning district of UR12. All of those development regulations for that base zoning district must be met unless the alternative provisions are proposed. Those are those site development allowances we discussed. As a reminder, council can request but not require additional conditions. I will note that the applicant has offered a zoning condition related to the affordable housing, Knightdale, affordable Knightdale, and then staff is also recommending a couple extra conditions, which we'll go through here in a moment. But as you know, prior to the adoption or rejection of a zoning map amendment, the town council has to make a consistency statement that's related to the comprehensive plan and why the action is reasonable in the public interest. So that's just a reminder as we dive into the comprehensive plan and what is called for on the subject properties. So looking through the 3 map series included in the comprehensive plan, the intentional growth area map identifies this as secondary growth area. It does not necessarily mean that growth is prohibited in this area. It just encourages forward thinking and unique designs to propose a development that's compatible with the adjacent neighborhoods. It's encouraged to have a mix of uses, a mixture of densities and intensities. Looks for a way to create new and energized neighborhoods that connect to existing and future developments, and then encourages that infrastructure, investments are made into the town's infrastructure, public infrastructure. Next map is the urban small town framework map. Again, this outlines the desired characteristics for different areas of the town. It's identified as a mixed-use development target area, and it's also the properties encompass a trail-oriented development corridor. There's not a whole lot of the guidance provided, in this map here. It defers, it kind of details more information to the future land use map. Which, the future land use map is, it shows the preferred development pattern for specific areas, and it sets the framework to realize the town's vision for growth and development. So the future land use place, the future place type map is identified as mixed use neighborhood, which encourages a mixture of uses with safe and convenient pedestrian access, a neighborhood that provides goods and services, that's also has a design that's compatible with existing and future neighborhoods, one that has varied housing types, lots, and home choices, with homes oriented towards the streets, and open spaces, small parks, and then also consideration of environmental features present. Comprehensive plan goes one step further and outlines specific development patterns that would be appropriate for a mixed-use neighborhood. So we have all this information has been included in the packet for tonight, but in general, there are recommendations for the way that the streets are laid out, the way the buildings are oriented, and their massing, other ways to treat open spaces, ways to embrace the environment. There's recommendations to make sure that we have complete streets and have multiple modal options for neighbors and the vicinity. And then there's some recommendations on sustainability efforts that should be considered. Looking at the place type transect, the mixed-use neighborhood falls into the neighborhoods category. What this graphic shows is how different land uses, their densities and intensities can merge together or transition from open spaces, your rural development patterns, all the way to your more urban development. So it goes from your rural open spaces to your urban small town. We talked about roadway connectivity and discussed Wide Waters Parkway and the ongoing discussions about the railroad crossing. As such, the applicant has demonstrated general compliance with the railway network plan that's contained within a comprehensive transportation plan, the UDO. The same applies for the side pass and greenway plan. I mentioned that there's a multi-use path proposed on and off of the Wide Waters Parkway to make sure that pedestrians can traverse the site. Saw this graphic, just again, this proposal, if approved, would contribute to this major collector road and would be responsible for the construction of the collector road. And so just again showing the future connectivity through the area. Looked at the strategic plan. There are, for development of this scale, there are three focus areas that could be embraced. I encourage the applicant to further detail how they align with the strategic plan in their PUD document. Looking at the Comprehensive Parks and Rec Master Plan, subject property is located within several of the service areas of Knightdale Station Park, the community pool, Mingo Creek Park, and Harper Park. We mentioned that greenway connectivity would be increased if this were to be approved, so eventually this corridor could get folks essentially from I-87 all the way up to Mingo, the Mingo Creek Greenway, and other recreational opportunities throughout town. All of the developments that are proposed in town are encouraged to embrace as many of the comprehensive plan's guiding principles. So looking at this and looking at a neighborhood of this scale, it would be anticipated that they would be able to embrace most of the guiding principles from what they've demonstrated, things such as town-wide placemaking, inclusive livable town, home and neighborhood choices, environmental stewardship and sustainability, multimodal transportation system, and community facilities and services. As I mentioned, the applicant has also done a little research into affordable Knightdale and look for ways that their proposal, could further that plan, further the goals and vision of that plan. So through the development and what they've demonstrated, they're proposing a development that expands housing options. There's, several different housing types on different size lots that could, give folks different options depending on stage of life they're in. With that, there's also an idea of there will be a mixed income focus. Different lot sizes, could have different price points, again, depending on, what stage of life these folks are in. And then also inclusive livable environment, that speaks to pedestrian connectivity and ensuring there's other routing options other than just the automobile. To go into that, so the applicant has offered this one zoning condition that prior to the final plat of each phase, they would make a financial contribution of $250 per front-loaded residential lot and $100 per rear-loaded residential lot. So this would be a payment into the Affordable Knightdale or Housing Trust Fund. And this aligns with what was proposed and approved through the Parkside at West Lake. They modeled the financial breakdown on that. So in total, this would, if approved, would generate approximately $26,000 that would be contributed to that trust fund for future use. Then looking at some of our recent approvals, pulled a couple of those zoning conditions, talking about pollinator gardens at amenity sites, including some educational signage to talk about the environmental features that are present on the site, looking for a way to ensure that, we have a tree canopy, but also vegetation that is helps with diversity and pollination. They've just to make it a formal condition, it's a recommendation that they include these architectural standards as a condition, so they're enforceable. And then the other two are related to making sure that the commercial out parcel is set up for success in that utilities are stubbed to the property so that whenever a tenant or builder is identified, they'll be able to just connect to those, those systems. And then the last one's recommended just that no construction traffic, utilize the roads within Churchill or Woodfield. And with that, that concludes my presentation. As always, I'm happy to answer any questions. But after that, the applicant and their team are here. They've prepared a presentation, and they're prepared to address the board and council. And then following that, since this is a public hearing, I'd love to hear from the neighbors that came out. So after all that, it would be staff's recommendation to receive the public comment, make a motion to close the joint public hearing, and refer ZMA 1-25 to the Land Use Review Board for review and recommendation. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. First, we'll bring it to council. Any questions or comments?
All right, I'll get us started. So first, thank you for your very thorough presentation. One of the questions I have on my list of questions is about the row homes. This is the first time I've seen the product referred to as row homes. Could you highlight how is that different from just our normal, rear-loaded single-family home that we normally see?
Yeah, I think it's more of a terminology thing because, what I see is they're a detached single-family product, that's rear-loaded. It's a narrower product. Maybe maybe the applicant can speak to like that terminology, but it's similar to what you'd be seeing that's being built out in Allen Park, and Forestville Yard right nearby here. So it's really just a detached product.
Do you have a map handy of the Wide Waters intersection with Old Faison back in your presentation somewhere? One of the things that I was kind of noticing, but I wasn't sure that it was highlighted well on a map, is we've been focusing a lot on the railroad crossing. But when I was looking at the Old Faison intersection with Wide Waters, it kind of looked like it was teed up with a single-family home on the southern end of Old Faison. So essentially, where the connection's currently proposed, it kind of looks like it sets us up for, if we wanted that extension, we would be looking at having to take someone's yard or something like that. And so I just wondered if you could speak to that.
Okay. Does this graphic at least help for right now? I know it's not zoomed in,
right?
But I can get to another one too. But we're talking about Wide Waters at the site access on Old Faison Road. And so when we were working with Linden Oaks the past 2 years to work on the alignment of Wide Waters through their development, we definitely noticed that there's a manufactured housing community, Shady Acres, on both sides of Old Faison Road. And when we were working with Linden Oaks, we tried to see if they felt that there would be sufficient room kind of in this wooded area. There are no homes right there to really reduce the impacts of the park. I will say that final design has not been made of those two areas, but it would definitely be our goal to figure out a design that doesn't impact yards. It doesn't say that won't happen, but I think it's an ongoing conversation and something that we can investigate a little bit more.
Yeah, I definitely like that looked at. I think on some of the zoomed in maps that I was looking at, it kind of looked like the intersection was split between I think it's the Shady Acres property line and the adjacent home right there at Old Faison and I can't recall the name of the street across on the other side. Kind of looked like it was split between, like, right on the property line. And I didn't want us, if there's a way to not line it up like that, I don't want us to set ourselves up
Understood.
for heartache in the future.
Understood.
Right there. definitely support all of the staff recommended conditions. I was looking at the phasing map and trying to decide if we were talking about using, neighborhood roads to, do some construction, and would definitely support the condition to not do that. I know in the past there's been no way around that when we've looked at different neighborhoods where we've made connections and through the neighborhood is the only way to the development. But when we've got a street that has to be constructed anyways out onto the main road, would certainly prefer that. I love the native planting commitment. I saw some of the land management stuff that they had done in our packet with, protecting as many existing tree stands as they could. So I really liked a lot of that stuff in the community gardens. Kind of the elephant in the room is the railroad crossing up at the top. I've told staff that my worst nightmare is that we approve something, we get it set up, the railroad's not constructible in the end after everything's said and done, and we have, counted on a crossing that we can never actually make happen. And so I would really be looking to see not just concept plans, but a constructible, like shovel-ready project level of plans where we can just pick up the plans and pursue funding, whether it be grants or a bond or something like that, but becomes a shovel-ready project for the town of Knightdale to pick up. I think this is a great opportunity. I've heard a lot of stuff about sustainable initiatives in here. We've really set ourselves up between the Greenway Trail up to the north, the Mingo Creek Parkway, the Mingo Creek Trail, and now our new Hodge Road Nature Park that the DOT just turned over to us, where we've got kind of like an emerging wildlife corridor. And I would love to see us talking about and looking at partnering with this developer, the developer to the north, to maybe pursue an official wildlife corridor designation here. There's some specific standards that apply to that from the federal government. It would be Wake County's first wildlife corridor. And so that would be an interesting, something that I would love to see us explore. In terms of the connections to the nearby neighborhoods, I think there's a great opportunity here for the developer to assist with placemaking with those neighborhoods. We talk a lot about placemaking. We talked about traffic calming here. Certainly some signage, for the Woodfield neighborhood, perhaps for the Churchill neighborhood, that, lets you know that you've arrived someplace different or that you're passing by someplace different and hopefully not driving through. I'll let somebody else go. I'll stop right there for now.
Thank you.
I just had a question in regards to, you had indicated that there was goods and services that were going to be in the first phase. So I guess for the retail space, in terms of the businesses that we're thinking about, is that something where the developer is soliciting for these businesses, or are we involved in helping figure out who would be in these places?
Sure. So to start with, right now, the commercial was proposed as the last phase, and we're hoping that, maybe there's a way to get the commercial to move up in the phasing schedule. But the way that the town participates in this is through this process and setting the parameters for that commercial out parcel. That's by reviewing the proposed uses that they've provided, make sure that it's small enough scale that it's comfortable, that would be comfortable, that it's not going to generate too much traffic, but it's also still providing a good need. And so like the intent of the plan unit development is that the master plan is proposed with these residential units, and then there's enough of a box that's filled for this commercial development that whenever a private developer approaches the applicant and says, hey, we'd be interested, we know that you have this commercial out parcel, what can we do here? They can take the PUD document, approval documents, and say, well, this is what town council approved for this commercial out parcel, and then that can help them solicit and find a tenant. It'd be less of the town, more of private development driving that.
So
Yeah, I'd like that idea of a wildlife corridor. I'll start off with that. That's something I've been thinking about for a while. I know we've had citizens talk about the loss of habitat, loss of trees, so I think sort of actually putting that on a map, maybe start thinking about it in general is a good thing. The sort of same concern there with the Parkway, Widewaters Parkway of the railroad, just making sure that we fully understand what it is, unless I was sort of trying to see that, but I think the town's perspective of what we think it would be, from what I was seeing, is about 30 feet tall, from, if I was reading that correctly, above the existing grade. So, yeah, just making sure, if that could be visualized. I think about the impacts over there on Sunday Silence, how I think that 30 feet tall is about as tall as this building. Should that, we need more trees along that slope, it just not be sort of an eyesore. And also those, the front-loaded lots that are further down, we'll make sure that, they actually, that slope doesn't come down into their front yards. I think that we definitely need to have that piece of information. One quick question for you. So at DRC, you said that there were several things that were discussed. I noted lot width, variety, and road and alley design, and a few other things. Were those items addressed in this latest submittal? It appeared that they were, but were most of those addressed?
Yeah. At that time, there were some front-loaded products that were proposed less than 60 feet. There's limited instances where town council has approved a front-loaded product that's less than 60. There are some 50-foot wide, but that was kind of the lot width discussion was, how could we, get 60-foot wide front-loaded lots, throughout the neighborhood. And then lot variety, at that time, there were still distinct pods of townhomes and different housing types. So as a result of those conversations at DRC, they came back, revised the plan, through conversations and kind of shook up the puzzle. So that was the lot width and variety that we talked about. And then we were talking about roadway design, frontage improvements on Old Faison Road, what Widewaters Parkway looks like, really the nitty gritty of what those cross sections look like. So that's what we were talking about generally.
And I'm glad that the roundabout seems feasible, because I'm assuming that with the roundabout, some of the tapers and all of that tend to go away, because everybody enters the roundabout sort of on equal footing. Certainly support that. Even if we as a town need to think about how we can really support that to make that, but it certainly meets our standard, for those two intersections. And I think for the Woodfield subdivision, for example, it could be, if that were in place, and, left turns are horrible sometimes. They're just terrible. So being able to go down and come back around, right turn and come right back around is certainly a much safer movement, and certainly safer, I think, in terms for pedestrians getting across. Another thing that I thought about that I don't know that it really applies here, but just something long-term to think about is, as we continue getting more pedestrian activity, we're encouraging pedestrian activity along Old Faison. Even the crossing, bridge crossing across I-87 is not the most conducive for pedestrians. Right now, there's no sidewalk, so just something I think long-term to think about.
Thank you.
So I guess really for me, it's more of a point of information on one point. What constitutes or prompts whether a developer has an in-person virtual versus a virtual meeting? I see both of these meetings were virtual, and I do know that sometimes that can create, barriers and limitations for some residents. Do we have a mechanism that triggers whether it's in-person or virtual?
Right. So right now we give the developers the option of virtual or in person. My understanding is that as a result of COVID-19. So during that time, before then it was all in-person meetings, and then things shifted and we started to provide the option for the virtual meeting. And it's just remained, it's not a written rule that it's one or the other, or, if it's a certain size, it has to be this way. It is up to the developer at this point.
Yeah, I definitely would love for us to, just from a staffing standpoint, circle back around to that and look at how that can actually be more in person if possible. I think residents deserve the developers standing and giving testimony to the projects they're bringing. You know, I appreciate the developers' lens of looking at our affordable housing plan, our affordable Knightdale plan. Would love to see, although I know they have sort of implied with smaller lot widths and things of that sort, that could create different price triggers. But, you know, it could, but it doesn't necessarily say that it would, and would love to see some type of designation, whether it's at a 80 to 100% area median income, you know, designation on a property for a period of time. I know we've had a development or two that has come along and had those sort of through a sunsetting provision over some period of time. I'm very much so like with Councilor McDonald on, you know, looking at ways to where there can be some strategic sort of design around some of the existing treescape versus the total mass grading, or maybe looking at the mass grading more on a phase appropriation. But overall, I think, like I said, that you all have done a great job of helping to sort of bring this to some visioning. I think there's still a little work to do, but I think we're getting a little closer to it.
Thank you.
I was interested to see the proposal for the potential of a 4-story townhome. I think particularly if those 4-story townhomes had rooftop features. I know I've seen some of those kind of down on the Cape Fear River around Castle Hayne, where they've got, you know, rooftop features that are looking out on that 4th story of the townhome. One of the questions that I had is kind of, I know the commercial building is on the last phase, and not necessarily to be built, although I would certainly support that being included as part of this, is actually the building of the commercial building. What size potential are we looking at with the commercial building? And like, I know we've looked at a list of, you know, types of businesses that we would be allowed in there, but, you know, kind of what could it accommodate?
Yeah, so right now, it'd be proposed as a 7,500 square foot building, you know, maybe broken up into different suites, but, you know, looking at, you know, maybe professional services, professional offices, you know, your medical, dental, you know, maybe your yoga studio, you know, small restaurant.
That would be like maybe 4 bays or
Yeah.
4 or 5 small
Possibly.
businesses.
Yeah, smaller suites, hopefully to help out.
On, I think it was page 6 in our council packet, but there was a reference to inset maps 3B and 3A, and I couldn't find those anywhere, and I was just wondering if we could get those
Yeah,
provided at some point.
yes, I can get that.
It was a zoom in on some of the blue water features
Yep.
and things like that.
I can do that.
So on the mass grading, it's, first of all, I like the idea that there's exceedance in, you know, some of the open areas. You know, that speaks well, and I think they've done a good job with that where they have it. You know, one thing to consider is maybe think about, you know, additional trees. Are we getting enough tree cover sort of planted back? You know, we've looked at different calipers sometimes and that. I think there could also be an opportunity as we explore that rail crossing, you know, maybe, you know, should some of that berming take place, you know, maybe not be so, you know, to come later, it could be very, very drastic. So almost having some of it in place, or maybe have it appear to blend more into the surrounding area, I think could be helpful. I'll sort of circle back on that. And the other comment I'd say is, you know, always love the idea of a community garden. I think it's great. You know, I'm not sure if you may need to provide. They may need to provide some parking or something close by. You know, I'm just, you know, I know if I don't know how far I'd like to trek to a garden. You know, with just a wheelbarrow. You know, so anyway, just a thought there. But I think I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you.
That triggered one more question for me. I didn't hear anything about, we've heard guest parking in basically every neighborhood that we've looked at over the course of the last 18 months.
Yeah.
Is there any provision for on-street guest parking?
So as currently, so the southern section is front-loaded, so on-street parking isn't going to work necessarily there. So it would be all on-site. Wide Waters Parkway would not have on-street parking. So really what you're seeing is on-street parking up in these areas here. On one side of the road, there's also some guest parking here by this amenity site. But in general, there's probably less on-street parking than we typically see. We typically recommend a half a parking space per unit, so one space per 2 units, which would be a little bit light. What's being shown is a little bit light on that, but maybe the applicant can kind of speak to their thought process on not overdoing on-street parking in their perspective.
Just one quick, just second or follow up. I'd also support all of staff's recommendations that you shared up there.
All right. I will bring it to the LURB before we have the applicant speak. Are there any questions from our LURB members?
Yeah.
And mass rating, of course, would happen with phase 1. What is the time frame between phase 1 and phase 10 approximately?
So the transportation impact analysis said that the build-out year would be 2029, so rather quickly. But as in terms of construction timeline, and I would defer to the applicant, they would probably give you a better estimate of how they see it being phased, timeline based on their experience and everything.
I also want to applaud the efforts from the Affordable Knightdale plan to be incorporated. I heard last week about our stormwater control measures and alternative measures for that, such as having pervious surfaces under certain lots. I would like to see more done on that side of the world. They mentioned our new parking lot for our wake vet being one of those services. I was thinking maybe around the clubhouse that might be an option, but we didn't have. And I completely agree with the bottom low guest parking being an issue in a neighborhood where it's an old neighborhood, but it's got too much street parking, and there are particularly townhome owners who have two parking spots per home, which means their teenager has nowhere to park. So you don't even have that guest. It's not enough parking for your family to do just 2 spots, especially if you're in a townhome that has a garage, and the garage is actually storage. So that is a safety issue in my world.
Thank you.
I also have a few questions on the parking as well. Do they have an idea of what they're going to put in the covenants? Just because if they don't have parking near their single-family homes, well, first, how many spaces or how many vehicles can fit in the, I guess, the proposed driveways that they have?
Yeah, so our minimum standard, so for the front loaded, the length of the driveway would be 25 feet. For the rear loaded, it'd be 20 feet. The width would have to be between 12 and 18 feet. So based on those dimensions, you could get 2 cars in the driveway. Some of the architectural conditions are saying that the front loaded single family homes would have a 2-car garage, so there's stipulations on the garage spaces. So yeah, so there'll be, parking in the garage and then parking in the driveway and then on-street parking. I can't speak to the HOA covenants, that's more of a private agreement that would be established. Town does review them, like, as we get closer to a neighborhood being built. Maybe the applicant could speak to, some of the other neighborhoods they've worked on, kind of what they, have done to ensure that. I'm guessing maybe like parking enforcement's maybe a concern.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it, because of parking enforcements. And I'm thinking about when guests do come, if they don't already have on-street parking, people are going to park there anyway, very likely. So it may prompt a letter to them or an unwanted phone call, which, brings disgruntled neighbors. And it just comes down to what kind of lifestyle do they want to make sure that their residents have. We recently did some training with the utilities department, so I have a lot of questions about, or I'm still understanding when it comes to the wetlands, the cause and effects of mass grading and such, but can you tell me what percentage of this property is considered wetland? Because it seemed like almost 80%.
I don't know the percentage off the top of my head.
I was looking at one of those maps, maybe one of the first two maps.
Yeah. I'm not 100% off the top of my head what percentage is wetlands and stream.
Page 6, maybe. Okay. So when they fill in all that wetland, where will the water go? Is it all going to go to those, the stormwater infrastructure? Is it all going, like, what would typically fall in on those wetlands? Or is it all going to now flow to the stormwater devices?
So I'm not an engineer, but generally, so there's, state and federal regulations that dictate how you can impact wetlands, what's classified as a wetland, what's jurisdictional. And there's rules and regulations on, how much you can impact. If you impact so much, then you have to, do X, Y, and Z. Again, I'm not fully versed in that, but my understanding in general is, if they get the systems, the impacts permitted, then they would have to still convey the water. They have to design a stormwater system that conveys the property or conveys water on the property and doesn't, divert water or push water off site without them treating it first. So they'll be, constructing a traditional stormwater pond. They're also committing to constructing what's called a constructed wetland, so essentially reestablishing a wetland in another location and getting water to go there, and then also a bioretention system. So there are some alternative designs that are being proposed to help treat the stormwater before it leaves the property and goes to our drainage system.
Two more questions. What does GR3PUD mean?
So that is General Residential 3 Plan Unit Development. So that's a zoning district. So a residential development that allows up to 3 units an acre.
And then the townhomes, the ones that are facing that commercial building, or adjacent from the commercial building, when residents look outside of their home, are they going to see that commercial building? Is that their view?
Based on the drawing, I would think so.
Okay,
Just being it's right across from it.
thank you.
So you had mentioned that the greenway or the mixed-use pathway portion will cut off from the Widewaters Parkway and then wind around. The area that winds around there, is there any plans for pedestrian lighting in that area?
I don't know if we've gotten that detailed quite yet. That is something that with other neighborhoods that we've been reviewing is looking at, what the lighting looks like at night in those areas, especially with trails. So, pedestrian scale lighting is something that our regulations, say it is permissible and it says, how bright they can be. So that's something that, could be considered here.
Thank you. And then also, could you please just clarify a little bit more about the phasing in terms, I think one of the staff recommendations was to ensure that the Widewaters Parkway entrance is essentially constructed in phase 1, correct? When I look at this, my immediate thing that I see is that there's really only one point of ingress and egress unless it's through other neighborhoods. So, yeah, if you could just clarify that and then kind of how that works with Creekview Crossing and Linden Oaks, how close they are, since this is contingent on their completion as well. Since I know their build out is 2029, so.
Yeah, so, based on this drawing, it's a little unclear of, if folks will be able to come in, if Widewaters Parkway will be constructed, day one to serve, the first phase, those front-loaded homes. I have communicated with the applicant that I was a little unclear on the intentions here, so I do think that they're going to address that in their presentation. So I think, there's some clarity there, but definitely, we want to limit the impacts, from going through adjacent neighborhoods, and, looking to route the initial traffic, into their site from, their driveway on Old Faison Road rather than, bleeding out to other neighborhoods.
One last thought, with our meeting with the stormwater control manager, he says, we were a little murky on the timeline. Has he had his input into these plans? He says oftentimes he doesn't see the stormwater control ponds, for instance, in their plan until late in the game.
Yeah, so we have stormwater, within our Public Works Department, we have stormwater folks, and I think that's who you're speaking about. So they're on our Development Review Committee. They do review the plans from sketch plan, master plan, and beyond. So, Ike Archer, they looked at the plans. A lot of times that master plan, we don't have the full calculations and the full stormwater design. It's more of, the engineer will, use their professional opinion and expertise to show an area that should be suitable to, convey all this water. And then, if the project is approved, then at the construction drawings, they would submit more detailed plans and calculations. And then, that's whenever, Ike Archer and his team would look at erosion plans and stormwater plans in greater detail.
So it's similar to like the commercial building and what's going to be in there. You got to wait till later in the process to see specifically what those ponds look like, for instance.
So I guess what would you be looking for? What would be of interest? Making sure that it's adequate size to capture the water?
In the materials and the safe measures, like for instance, does it have a fence or not? That kind of thought.
Yeah, and there are regulations in place that if the certain slopes are present along the ponds, then fences would be required. It's generally being looked at, but as any project moves forward, it gets more and more detail presented to us, and then our professionals review it for compliance.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. At this time, we will give some time for the applicant to speak.
All right, good evening, Mayor Day, members of Town Council. My name is Toby Coleman. I'm a land use attorney with Smith Anderson in Raleigh, and thank you for the time tonight. Thank you for everybody for coming out. As always, these joint public hearings are really useful in this process, and we find it to be, I think I speak for my client, Lock 7 Development, and particularly for Dave Gorman here, when I say that the guidance that we've been getting from Gideon and his team and the guidance we're getting tonight is very helpful, and we are listening and taking notes. As I mentioned, Dave Gorman's here with me. His picture's up on the screen. He's going to be doing the bulk of the presentation. Also with us tonight is Brandon Moore of the site group, who's really the landscape architect for this project. He's been doing all the drawings and can answer a lot of the technical questions. In terms of this project, this is as I think somebody said that Gideon gave a very thorough presentation. I think that's very accurate. This is a project that David and his team have been working on with the town for over a year now. And Gideon did a really good job of showing sort of the way that things have worked out. We're really excited about where this is, and I think, I think as some of the council members noted, while there's things that you guys still have comments on, I think the impact of the collaboration with town staff really shows up in this project. You've got, sort of just going through before the meeting, it's got a commitment as to, to affordable housing, which is something you guys are seeing more and more of, but I think that really is something that came from, staff really giving some guidance. You've got green stormwater infrastructure. You've got, extensive open space and recreational facilities, and really a thoughtful development around some of the wetlands and things like that. You've got, a crucial portion of Widewaters Parkway, and while not part of this, there is, as Gideon mentioned, a lot of discussion going on about how does design get done for that railroad crossing, and how does that work? How does that partnership work with the town? Because it really is going to be a partnership. And then there has been a lot of work and a lot of coordination with the town to try to address both really, Woodfield has been the most vocal about concerns about connections to the existing neighborhoods. But there's this plan shows a lot of thought. We didn't just come in saying, hey, we're going to do something to try to address it. There is, a specific sort of traffic calming device. We've heard, Councilor McDonald, thank you for your thoughts on, some additional things we can do. But we've really tried to address that in a way that's thoughtful, but also respects the need for interconnectivity. So with that, I'll hand it over to David, who will give the bulk of the presentation.
Good evening. My name is David Gorman. Thank you for having me here tonight. I wanted to thank Gideon for such a detailed and informative presentation. I'm really going to work to not repeat a lot of things he already said and try to just go into new things I can provide. So I've been a developer for 20 years. We build residential neighborhoods. I'm a partner here at Lock 7. We build retail, residential, industrial, so we have experience with a lot of different product types. I put 4 examples of projects that we've either currently, we're working on now, or we finished recently, just to give you an idea of our expertise. We've done large rezonings in Chapel Hill and Fuquay Varina over the last 2 years. We just finished a townhome project in downtown Cary, and we just finished all the horizontal infrastructure and site work on a townhome community in western North Carolina in Hendersonville. So a little bit about this project. It's two different parcels that are being assembled and developed at the same time. I thought this image from 1988 was sort of useful to talk about the history of the site. It was used for agriculture and timber. It was cleared at the southern portion and northern portion, and the majority of the mature trees were towards the center of the site. There were dirt roads off Old Faison in a similar location to where the new one is proposed, as well as Woodfield Lane turned into a dirt road, which then crossed over the railroad at an at-grade crossing, which technically still exists, but the railroad will not recognize that as an existing crossing, which is what's necessitating the bridge. Other people have tried to develop these parcels. We're not the first ones. They have not proceeded for various reasons. The last one was in 2021, and it was a plan for the southernmost parcel, but not the two. I think there were a lot of problems with it, but reading through the notes, the 2 biggest issues were that it did not include a mix of housing types that we have provided, and it also did not connect Widewaters Parkway because it only had one of the two necessary parcels. So this is the first time anyone has tried to develop both at the same time. So the next segment of my presentation, I sort of tried to go through some of the areas that Gideon suggested might need more detail. I do want to clarify that we're going to direct construction traffic through Old Faison and not through either of the adjacent neighborhoods. If that was not clear on our phasing plan, we will address that moving forward. We're going to work on these grading details. I know there's been a lot of talk tonight about mass grading. You know, with a site like this, with such a large road going through the center, and then the amount of lots that have both alley and front, so there's a significant amount of grading to be done, as well as the fact that we're importing a significant amount of dirt to make the road and railway connection. You know, it needs to be graded more extensively than selective grading. That being said, we're going to work to try to preserve any mature trees we can. We are thoughtful in our construction, and this is definitely something we'll continue to work on with the town staff. Also, we'll have a erosion and sediment control plan and a limit of disturbance, which will maintain the buffers around the site that'll help create some separation between our project and adjacent neighbors. And then another detail that I think is important to bring up here is that we're proposing 30-foot buffers, landscape buffers around the site, even though only 20 foot is required. This will create a little more privacy and also allow more of the existing trees, which are around the exterior of the site, to remain. Let's see. Okay, so a lot of questions and good questions about our phasing plan. So we put forth 10 phases. The goal was to have flexibility in the sequencing of which phases begin at which time. The overall concept is to start off Old Faison and work our way back through the site. And that's why phase 1 and 2 are towards the front. 1A is a pond that will be created to support those lots. The pond is oversized and greater than what is needed, which will support additional development activity, including the non-residential parcel. Also, on a project like this that has multiple housing types, it's not out of the question that there'll be multiple builders building at the same time. That's because some builders that we work with build the larger single-family homes, and others focus on the townhomes or the road dwellings. So the plan, as we put forth, speaks to allowing flexibility for the exact sequencing. But we understand that this has created a lot of confusion about what will start when. So we're going to continue to work with Gideon and his team to formalize this plan as we get deeper into the design. And then the last point was one that had been asked, when will we bring the non-residential online? The challenge with the non-residential space is that you need residents here, which are commonly referred to as rooftops, to support the retail businesses. So the plan, we have it at the very end of the process. The thought was that the road will be in place and that the houses will be built, but very much we understand the suggestions that were brought forth earlier tonight about moving it forward, and that's something we can continue to look at as we move through the process. So I don't need to go, I think, through all of this because Gideon did a really great job. I can come back to this slide if anyone has specific questions, but the general concept is we want to create unique, interesting houses. Some of the UDO language put limitations on the width and architecture and ability to create sort of a unique, differentiated neighborhood. And so we've generally proposed allowances that we think make this an even more exciting, interesting place to live. Affordable housing. So the town of Knightdale has an affordable housing plan. There's 4 components to it: funding, process, demonstration, and subsidy. So funding is obviously the first and foremost one. We've proposed to make a contribution for each lot. The payments are greater for the larger homes and lower for the row and town dwellings. We've just seen that no one is better to dictate where this money goes than a trust fund that is set up to further affordable housing. Oftentimes this money is used for improving older affordable housing or providing grants to new home buyers. The money can be spread greater if we make it a financial contribution than if we had maybe one or two less expensive houses at AMI levels. But that's definitely something that came up tonight that we can continue to look at. For the process, we're creating a lot of different housing types, and one of the allowances we've asked for is to create smaller lots than is typically provided, especially for the townhomes. Smaller lots allow for less expensive housing, and it follows a trend in the market right now where interest rates are elevated and buyers are stretched. And so not only will the allowance allow us to create a more attainable housing, but it furthers the affordable housing goals of the town. Parking and traffic. So we have 86 parking spots that are not directly in a driveway or a garage. Our narrowest lots are 20 feet, which is still wide enough for a two-car garage. We're anticipating, as we've seen in other communities, people will likely park in their driveways as well. Outside of the spots that are unique to lots, we have 86 on-street spots or parking lots at the amenity or parking for the non-residential. I've heard the comments tonight about additional visitor parking. I think they're well-founded. Usually there's a trade-off with open or green space by adding more parking, so it'll definitely be a balancing act, but it seems like there should be a way to add some more parking. We do think the 86 parking spots that we've provided are sufficient. We generally, for the retail, we want to see 4 per 1,000 and we're exceeding that. We have more than 4 spots per 1,000 square feet of rentable area. I'd also bring up, as I was hearing the conversation, we're providing walking trails, we're providing, pedestrian paths, greenway. The goal is really to encourage people not to drive everywhere. And we understand that people have cars and they still need somewhere for them to go. But, we're really working on the design to make it, you could bike somewhere instead of having to drive everywhere. So let's talk about the bridge. We have spent a lot of time on this bridge, and we've met with several specific engineering firms that specialize in bridge design and construction. The design that we originally proposed did not provide as much spacing as may be needed for the approach to make the turn to go up over the bridge. So the design that you see now takes into account this space that will be needed to make the approach. We also changed the orientation of the housing at the bridge approach to address some of the concerns Councilmember Morgan brought up about having walls along the approach. But very much we can continue to look at the berming and the plantings. I think those are good ideas. So we met with Stantec, Kimley Horn, Benesh, Carolina TEA. All these firms design bridges. And the way this process works for anyone who hasn't been through it, and I don't know why anyone would, the railroad is owned by Norfolk Southern. The trains that drive on this track are operated by Coastal Carolina. So you have two different parties that have to agree to allow a crossing over the bridge. And the way the system works is that you engage an engineer, which is the first step. You meet with Norfolk Southern, which is the owner, and they will set a budget, a review budget, that you will pay their costs to review the drawings you're proposing. And so what we have proposed to the town is we will advance the money for Norfolk Southern, we'll advance the money if required for Coastal Carolina, we'll advance the money for the engineer, and then as this process advances, we would be reimbursed by the town for this original engineering design. So first, we need to understand how this structure will work. We are committed to managing this process, selecting an engineer, establishing these budgets, and advancing from sort of just an idea into an actual concept that the railroad will approve. Once the railroad approves the design, then generally a contractor would be awarded, and the actual final design of the bridge would be part of the construction scope with the contractor. When we can talk more about this, we have proposed several ideas to the town to save money on the bridge, specifically reducing the cross-section, because the design that's shown in the transportation plan is very wide, and it's going to be more expensive than doing a more streamlined approach. We've also proposed using a pre-engineered solution, like a concrete structure. I mean, one of the things that we've learned through this process, and we've been, many, many meetings with the railroad and the engineers, the image that's shown here has piers that are in the railroad right away. And actually the design that's in the town's transportation plan also shows piers, but Norfolk Southern has relayed to us that they won't allow any piers in their 100-foot right-of-way area. So we're making great progress on making this a reality, and I think we have a good plan to get there, but this is sort of how we think we can move the bridge from just an idea to a real thing. Stormwater, so typically stormwater is retained in ponds. We do have a pond, but we're making it larger than it needs to be to make it an amenity. We've added a fountain in the center of it to make it more attractive, as the greenway and a lot of the interior trails wrap around this new water feature. But in addition to just having the pond, we've agreed to a constructed wetland and a buyer retention area, both of which support natural habitats and are more gentle an approach to treating stormwater. These were consolidated, they were moved based on feedback we got from council members and from planning staff. And I think now we have a plan that's more appealing and it's functional, and I think it's going to be a real win for anyone using the trail. Oh, I think that's it. So yeah, that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have, and thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for providing the additional information. I'll start with council with questions for the applicant.
One quick question, David. Thank you for the info. As you guys seem to be residential and commercial developers, is the plan to actually build out the commercial as a shell, and then upon lease out, it will go to whatever various commercial tenants, or are you all looking to just placehold that and then actually let a commercial developer finish out the project?
So typically, retail is either developed as spec or build to suit. Spec development would be building it and then waiting for a tenant to come. Build to suit would be waiting until we had a user in place and then building the structure to accommodate the tenant. Typically, we will look to build to suit, which means that early in the process, we would make it available and as appealing to users as possible. And then once we had a coffee shop or a restaurant or an ice cream shop, we would then, with the lease in hand, proceed to construct the building for the user.
So this is sort of, I think we talked about trail-oriented development. It appears like there's a lot of trails. You spoke to that and all. Maybe, what are some things that you think about as far as signage or some other unique features that you could bring to really enhance that sort of trail-oriented type development?
Yeah, we have a great landscape architect in Brandon who's here tonight, and he might be able to speak to that. But we have committed to putting wayfinding signage throughout the site. It's the town's preferred signage. But yeah, we want the public to come through these trails. We want the greenway to be an amenity. We're trying to make it as attractive as possible. I heard one question earlier about lighting and safety, and these are all great questions that as we move forward in the design, we can accommodate.
And also, what you showed as far as architectural, I like it. I definitely like the front porches, plenty of front porches. Sometimes we get some that I feel a little skimpy, but what you were showing there, some almost including the entire frontage of some of those homes, especially the smaller product, I think is really crucial.
Yeah, we have included language in our architectural conditions about a minimum for it, but by all means, it's not out of the question that they'd even exceed the minimum.
My first question has to do with the northern stormwater pond up there. I know in the past we had kind of talked about some of the housing products that are there. Are there concerns with, it's hard to tell on the map, is the dotted line with the stormwater pond actually where it goes, or is that just sort of like a big foot, stormwater pond here? How does that interact with the bridge at that location with the grading and things like that are required?
So the pond that's further to the north, and I apologize, this is not a great image for it, but that's where the constructed wetland would go. The pond that's at the center of the site is the larger primary pond. So I think that the exact design and orientation still has to be engineered, but we've designed the center pond to be big enough to make sure that the other pond will fit in the space that's provided.
The other thing I wanted to just briefly mention about our affordable housing plan, and I think we've seen it in the last 2 or 3 neighborhood rezonings that have come through, is a condition to have nothing in your HOA documents that would preclude accessory dwelling units in the future. And so that is one of the things, certainly on townhomes, and even the detached single families, maybe it's not as much of the row houses, it's not as much of an issue, but allowing the construction of accessory dwelling units where they fit in with town regulations in the future would be certainly something we'd love to see.
Yeah, that seems like a request that would be easy to accommodate.
I just had a quick question. You had made mention about different builders are actually going to be building in this subdivision. So I'm under the impression that they will have to use the blueprints that are provided, that we've approved, and things of that matter, right?
Correct. The architectural conditions and the other site allowances would carry forward to whoever builds here. And the concept of having multiple builders, like Knightdale Station and Brio, and there's many other projects in Knightdale that have multiple builders building in the same development. So it wouldn't be unique to this project, but any conditions that you all would put on the project would carry forward for anyone.
One last comment about the railroad bridge. I understand we've literally got a giant hurdle to jump over here, and we also have a silent partner in the game that I'm not aware if they're in the room. I don't think that they are in the development to the north. And I know we're not exactly letting you off easy on the railroad bridge, and really, my desire is that we see a fully constructible plan brought forward. But I wanted to just take a moment and, reiterate our commitment to that process and engaging the partner to the north and doing everything in our power to bring them into this conversation and work with that as well.
Sure. We have interacted with the other developer, and we can definitely continue to have conversations.
Awesome. None others from council? Any from?
I have a minor comment. I noticed your amenities had I think it was a bocce court? I'm probably saying it wrong.
A bocce court? Yeah.
And then you had a soccer field. And I just want to relay, my experiences with the soccer field is the same thing as a multi-purpose field, is the same thing as a blank field. And even if you put up soccer goals, somebody has to pay for the replacement of it. perhaps there's another use?
Yeah. I think, so when we were putting potential active uses in that space, we were brainstorming activities that the residents here might want to do, and that's how we landed on bocce and soccer. But by all means, we will continue to look at that and make sure what we're providing is going to be a benefit and also sustainable for the community.
When it comes to the railroad, apologies, when it comes to the railroad, I don't quite grasp everything, but I did have a question. I understand that Norfolk has a rate that they're going to charge to review. Is it possible that they can share, or have they shared, or can they share some plans that they've approved in the past that is comparable to what we're going to propose, or you're going to propose, rather?
So the benefit of using sort of one of the engineers that we met with is that they all have recently constructed similar bridges that have gotten approved. So the benefit of working with Stantec, for example, is they have bridge engineers that work every day with the railroad. Specifically to your question, I've found the railroad to be exceedingly unhelpful in sort of furthering the cause. But the first step would be setting up a budget with them to provide feedback. And I know that's sort of frustrating, but they don't want to spend any money on engineering or legal. So they tell you what you have to pay them for them to work with you.
And then the 86 parking, is that the parking that's specifically for the homeowners?
No, that includes the retail, and it would be guest parking as well.
Oh, okay. And that was mostly, I guess, at the northeast side, and then the commercial side?
Yeah, there's some, and I apologize. In my presentation, I don't have the overall. But yes, there's some at the amenity to the north where the pool and clubhouse is located. There's some towards the central green where the open space is. And then there's some on the bottom right at the retail. And we in various versions of this plan have had more on-street parking at various times, but we've been working pretty closely with the town staff to meet the roadway details that are required. And so some places that we had more on-street parking, like Widewaters Parkway, it was all removed because it doesn't meet the town's cross-section. So I think you all are bringing up a great point that we should continue to look at where we can provide parking. I still don't believe there's a shortage at this site, but I think just to maybe accommodate some of the potential concerns, there's probably some areas that we could carve out some additional parking.
And it's for, I guess, my perspective as a homeowner, it's not necessarily the shortage, it's the distance from the single-family homes, like really having to tell your guests, oh, there's parking,
Sure.
several blocks down. My last thing is, and I'm just curious, the public art. When you're thinking about the type of structures you want there, what else are you thinking about? Like the lifestyle, the character of the homes, or the thought prompts that you want to provide for the person, the resident, or the guest that's, walking in the natural area?
Sure. I mean, it's a great question. I think the honest answer is we bring on consultants that are very good at doing that. I like enjoying art, but I'm not an expert on it. But either the site group, which is our engineering and landscape architecture firm, or a outside art consultant would come in and help make sure that we're picking art that's really going to be unique and special.
Thank you.
Sure.
You may have actually answered my question, because mine was regarding those 86 parking spots as well. So they're not on lots, so that does include the townhomes. You said it included the commercial area, but it also includes the townhomes area, I'm guessing, but not the single families.
Right, so the 86 is any parking spot that's not on a private lot. And the private lot would essentially be the garage or the parking pad immediately either in front or behind the home. Sure. Yeah, there's always a balance between having enough parking but not having too much parking. But it sounds like just from all the questions I'm hearing tonight, we need to take a closer look at that, and that's something we can do as we continue to evolve the design.
All right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I think that's the questions that we have from council and our alert members. So now we are going to open up to the public for public comment. So at this time, I will open the floor for public comment. And if there is anyone who would like to speak on this item, you may come forward at this time. Please make sure to have signed the speaker sheet that's located at the entry table. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. There is a timer that's indicated just at the end of this here that will go off at the end of the 3 minutes. Large groups are asked to designate a spokesperson. When at the podium, please be sure to state your name and address for the record. And just one last comment as a reminder, public comment is an opportunity to share information with the town council and with our land use review board. This is not a time for discussion, but rather an opportunity for the council and our LURB members to take comments under consideration. Please be respectful. Respectful communication is expected and appreciated. So now at this time, if you would like to speak, you may come forward.
My name's Tommy Woodruff. I live at 100 Shady Circle in Knightdale. I'll have the honor of watching every car pull into this new area because it's right across from my front porch. I'm concerned about, we have 2 developments going on. One, a couple houses up that goes to Bethlehem. They have an access coming into Old Faison. Now this one's going to have an access from Old Faison going into that area. Plus, if the bridge comes in, then there'll be all this traffic on Old Faison, and I don't think Old Faison can handle it. And then the construction coming in, there's no place for these vehicles to offload anything. If you bring a lowboy in with a dozer or a grader, he's gonna have to block the road to unload it. There's no place for him to do it. And those are my concerns. I'm not against it. I hope that, wish them success, but those are concerns that need to be brought forward and somebody needs to address them. Because every time I pull on my road, Shady Circle, I'm gonna be delayed by traffic and construction and vehicles coming in and out trying to get into this area. There's nothing there for them to offload anyway. That's all I got to say. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment.
Good evening. My name is Lisbon Chavius. My wife and I live at 908 Pleasant Colony Drive. Recently, they just added a left lane off of Faison to get on Hodge. That's already pretty congested, probably a 3-cycle lightweight at peak times, of course. Any consideration been given to how much more traffic that's going to create going that way? That's my question, one question. And as I was having difficulty determining on the map, is it right off Old Faison? It's right when you come from Hodge to Old Faison, it's a little vacant lot there that says retail space available. Is that part of the construction area? It's being proposed? That's my 2 questions.
No, and I do want to say, if you have specific questions, we want to make sure that we answer those questions and get you all the answers that you need. So what we can have is we can have a staff member that talks to you directly, whether it's at the end of this meeting or whether it's later. We can just connect with you to get those answers for you.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Julia Eschler, and my husband, brother, and I live at 5124 Woodfield Lane, 1 lot from the proposed Faison Reserve entrance. We are one family, but many of our neighbors have joined us tonight, and I'd ask them to stand if they're willing and able. Thanks, guys. Go Woodfield. Woodfield Lane. Feel free to sit down. Thanks, guys. Woodfield Lane is a dead-end street where children learn how to skate and ride their bikes there. Neighbors walk safely, and people look out for one another. When someone finds a snake in their house, a neighbor comes running out to help them. When someone is sick, food shows up. When someone takes a spill, we pick them up and call their family. And this is not accidental. It is a community that has been cultivated over years, and it functions the way it does in part because of the street's character. Dead-end streets are not simply a quirk of geography, and research consistently shows that street connectivity and traffic volume are among the strongest predictions of pedestrian injury risk, particularly for children and older adults. A study published in Accident Analysis and Prevention found that children on cul-de-sacs and low-volume residential streets have significantly lower injury rates than those on connector streets. Lower traffic volumes mean more outdoor activity, slower speeds, and more eyes on the street, which is what we have now, and which is what we're asking you to protect tonight. We appreciate the efforts of our liaison, Sally Harmon, who has worked hard to keep our neighborhood informed, and we understand that there are requirements that are non-negotiable and that the road connection is non-negotiable. But there is a huge difference between a road that connects two neighborhoods and a road that becomes a commuter shortcut. So my ask tonight is this, is that the town and the developer and the applicant, whatever the right parties are, all work together to design this connection in a way that actively discourages through traffic so Woodfield Lane does not become a shortcut or a commuter route. We are asking for the least impactful design scenario available. We chose Woodfield Lane, and we've all stayed because of what it is. Not just for the trees or the quiet, but what the quiet makes possible. Children outside, neighbors who know each other, and a street where people still stop and help. That doesn't survive a commuter cut-through. With whatever is still within your control, please design this road so that it serves neighbors, not shortcuts. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for representing your group. Thank you all for coming out as well.
Good evening. My name is Gavin Kistinger. I'm representing my wife and I. We both live at 5104 Woodfield Lane. We're not in support of the rezoning request. The proposed development contains housing units that are neither similar in density nor style to the existing homes within the area, such as Planters Walk, the existing Churchill subdivision, and our little subdivision on Woodfield Lane. Knightdale is a nice town, having the majority of developed residential areas already being zoned for medium density GR8 or low density GR3. And this, I believe it's going to UR12. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but there's a lot. It's a much more dense designation. In addition, the developer said that they're giving us an extra few feet for the buffer zone. The riparian area for the non-tax paying bugs, bunnies, lizards, and other critters get 50 feet. Residents that are taxpayers, and I realize it's his land and it's going to be in your town and we're in the extra district, why can't we have at least a 50-foot buffer as well? We're also opposed to the commercial development. Commercial property has no place within the residential zoning. It'll abut against one of our neighbors' pieces of property. Residents along Old Phasian Road have survived for decades. I mean, the neighborhood's 35 years old, by driving 10 minutes to get milk or cigarettes or go have a meal. Knightdale's not without its benefits. In addition to, like my neighbors, I'm concerned with the extra traffic on Woodfield Lane. Woodfield Lane, I believe, is a 60-foot right-of-way, but currently only 18 feet of that is paved. The traffic devices they're talking about look like they're going to be placed where the subdivisions connect. That leaves, you can't really tell, but on a better map you can see that leaves about a quarter mile to get up to a running speed either from Old Phasian or towards Old Phasian along Woodfield Lane. I'm not a fan of, they're already asking for variances to make the lot smaller to increase the density of homes. You don't need to have affordable housing on a smaller lot, you can have a smaller house on a nice sized lot. For the open areas, for the community gardens, we already have community gardens. They're called yards. You know, give these people, give the consumer a product that they can garden in their house, be proud, have their friends over. Parking as well would be nice, you know. So it's just too dense for us. So until that's rectified, my wife and I can't support the request for rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing tonight as well. Is there anyone else here? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jermaine McCammon. I'm from Woodfield Lane. I'm representing my wife and myself. We've stayed in this community for 20 years and counting. Like our neighbor said, the streets are safe. We can get up, we can go walk any time of the night. We look out for each other. The proposed rezoning, we would reject it. For one, it would pose a lot of safety risks for our kids. We let our kids out any day, anytime, with respect to the hours. We know our neighbors will look out for them. We know that if something happens, we will know about it right away. With this rezoning, there's no telling what time of day or night people are going to be traversing the Woodfield Lane street. Secondly, the Knightdale buffer zone that he was referring to, it is actually 50 feet, not 30 feet like he was saying that, okay, he's gonna give us a little more than it's supposed to be. It's already supposed to be 50 feet. Thirdly, we as residents of Woodfield Lane already see a lot of traffic the way it is. And they have a development that's going on right now, and he's proposing a second one. And the connectivity that he's talking about, Woodfield Lane is going to be now considered a main road, regardless of what they're saying. If you actually visit the site, you'll see where they're proposing that residential area is right at the head of Woodfield Lane. So if you put a residential building there with all those offices, our street is right next to it. And then if he's gonna connect Knightdale Parkway to our street, everyone from Knightdale Parkway is gonna be using that street to get to this residential neighborhood and vice versa. So then that begs the question, our kids, the walkable areas for the residents there, that's going to be gone. He also mentioned that for Woodfield Lane, if I'm not mistaken, there's not going to be the actual walkway. He's going to narrow the roads. I don't know if I got that correctly or not. But if that's the case, to prevent drivers from speeding through there, that's not going to prevent motorists from speeding through on a road. Right? So for all those reasons and many more, yes, that's time. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for your comments. I believe there was, you may come forward.
My name is Frank Lorick. I live at 5019 Woodfield Lane also. And I'm going to do my best not to repeat what you've already heard, so I'll go pretty short. I'm not opposed to growth. I'm not opposed to change. The only time I'm opposed to that is when it affects my family or my finances, okay? If you're familiar with Woodfield Lane, I'm the second house on the left, okay? The retail piece is going to be kind of in my backyard as well as my neighbor's backyard. That's not a good thing if you live in a subdivision, to have retail in your backyard. The other thing I'm going to have in my backyard are the townhomes. And again, I'm not opposed to change. I am very much opposed to things that get into my pocket, okay? And me looking out my kitchen window, my dining room window, and seeing somebody's garage doors open, because it's my understanding townhomes are going to be, garages are going to be in the back, and the parking's going to be in the back. So that's going to be what I'm going to see out of my kitchen window, my dining room window. That's not the ideal situation. Property values. The lots on Woodfield Lane, most of them are an acre plus. Mine is 1.26 acres. I've lived in that house for 33 years, okay? And I'm not a young man, I don't mind saying. I hope to live the rest of my life there. But as we get compressed in, and that's what's going to happen with these smaller homes, it's going to impact the value of our properties. Whether y'all like it or not, it's going to impact the values of our property. So I'm concerned about that. Our street, you've heard it tonight a number of times. My two girls, who are now grown and have children of their own, we keep grandchildren. They grew up on that street riding bicycles, going to see their friends on that street. If we open up Woodfield Lane to traffic like we're talking about doing it, that's not going to happen anymore. And that'll change the whole atmosphere of our neighborhood. 19 homes is all it is on Woodfield Lane, okay? And the majority of the people there, half of those people, 19 homes, have people like myself that have lived there a long time and now retired there, okay? Again, that's not what we're looking to do. So property values are a concern. The heavy traffic on our street, I didn't realize that there was going to be a traffic circle there on Old Faison, almost next to our entrance for Woodfield Lane, okay? You put all of this traffic on that traffic circle coming out of this subdivision all the way from whatever that Commonwealth is, that subdivision will come all the way through from 64 over to Old Faison. It's going to be a major traffic jam there. I ask that you reconsider how it's affecting the current residents of Woodfield Lane, as well as how it's going to affect our families as things change. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Is there anyone else here tonight who wishes to speak on this item? If so, you may come forward at this time. If not, at this time, I'll turn it over to our town clerk to share written comments that we have received.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, and the Land Use Review Board. We did receive one written comment for tonight's public hearing on ZMA 1-25. Since you've all received that comment via email, I'll just briefly summarize. Sally Harmon, 5128 Woodfield Lane, speaking on behalf of residents in the Woodfield Homeowners Alliance, shared concerns related to traffic safety and infrastructure capacity, consistency with subdivision standards and planning intent, preservation of neighborhood character, and meaningful community engagement. Ms. Harmon requested modifications to the current proposal that would eliminate or redesign the Woodfield Lane connection, comprehensive traffic and environmental impact reviews, and efforts to ensure that the existing residents are not adversely affected by the infrastructure demands created by new growth. And so this comment in its entirety will be included in the official record of the meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And thank everyone for that came tonight. Thank you for sharing your comments. Your comments have been heard. They have been recorded. If you do have any further questions, need any further information, our staff is available to be able to answer any questions. So please make sure you have their information. We have your information so that we can connect with you. Bring it back now at this time to council or our LURB members for any last comments before we entertain a motion.
I'll take a second and thank everybody for sticking with us. I know that the meetings tend to go late and they go long, and so we appreciate you hanging out to the end to do the public comment. I just want to reiterate, we've heard a lot from residents tonight about the traffic situation on Woodville Lane, and so I would especially be interested to hear any off-site traffic calming that might be available to us on Woodville Lane, just so that we can explore that and have that conversation. Reiterate our commitment to seeing this railroad bridge thing through. That is possibly our highest transportation priority in the town of Knightdale, and on essentially every plan that we have. I think that's the end of my comments.
Yeah, just one thought I had too, sort of to follow up along those same lines. I think we all would be committed to, we heard a lot about the residents along Woodfield Lane. My thought is, and I know the developers will do all they can, and we're going to ensure that they could. It would be my recommendation for sure, is to make that old phase and road connection out of this subdivision so highly effective that nobody would even think about going any other way than that way. So I think that's certainly a good way to think about it.
No additional. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to close the joint public hearing and refer ZMA 125 to the Land Use Review Board for review and recommendation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So now, this is the only item that we have this evening for our joint public hearing, so may I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Majority approves, motion carries. We stand adjourned at this time.